There are still more people buying second-hand machines than there are buying brand new ones, and apparently the most popular price category is £3,000 to £4,000. So supposing you want a sports bike, you want to go fast, well, there are loads and loads of bikes that would fit into that class. High performance and between £3,000 and £4,000. I've picked just 3 out of the showroom. I could easily have found 10 or more. There are loads and loads, but I've gone for the larger capacity machines. I've got a 750, I've got a 900 and a 1000. Now if we put them in price order, we start with the 750. Kawasaki ZXR 750 1989 F registered, and this is on offer at just about £3,000. Next up in the price is the X-Up. Slightly younger, a year younger, 1990 on a G. Pretty decent nick, and this is on offer at £3,800. And the dearest of this bunch is also the youngest. It's a 1993 K registered CBR 900, of course, a Fireblade, and that's up for grabs at £4 grand. But let's go back to the cheapest, the Kawasaki ZXR 750 1989. Remember this one, F registered, and this is the first of the ZXR 750s. This is the H1 model. Now it does look a bit dated, but I certainly don't think it looks 10 years old, and although it might have a slightly dated image, it's still capable of well over 150 miles an hour. The ZXR 750 is a full-on, no-nonsense, head-down performance machine. The engine likes to be worked hard, although early models like this H1 do have a reputation for being slightly lacking in the mid-range, something that Kawasaki sorted out on the later J and L versions. Another factory improvement was the front-end handling. This H1 is nowhere near as refined as the later models, the steering feeling rather heavy and slightly awkward, especially at low speed. But remember, this example is only going to cost you £3,000. It's got good looks, excellent performance, decent handling. Okay, it's not razor sharp, but you'd have to be riding it very, very hard before it got really out of shape. Got good brakes and loads of street cred, which to some people is very important. You could be seen on something a lot worse than a ZXR 750. But maybe you've got a bit more cash, so let's go over the £3,500 mark to this 1990 G registered Yamaha FZR 1000R, the X-Up, on offer at £3,800. Now this model was actually introduced back in 1987, but it didn't get the X-Up system until 1989. So what's the X-Up system? Well, it stands for Exhaust Ultimate Performance, and it's a device in the exhaust for creating a back pressure in the engine to improve the mid-range. It's a valve, basically. You'll hear it referred to as an X-Up valve, which opens and closes. And guess what? It sticks. So you really need to make sure that's working properly. The only way to do that is to insist on a decent test ride before you buy. Now, if you ever have ridden a decent one, you'll certainly know the difference when you climb aboard a duffer. One thing we haven't got on this 1990 model, well, 2 things really. Front forks, upside down front forks, we haven't got them. They didn't arrive until 1991 on the X-Up. And on the subject of suspension, the rear shocks on these have been known to wear out fairly quickly, especially if the bike has been used a lot for 2-up work. Now, if you're buying from a dealer, you'll never know whether it's been used solo or 2-up. But you might get some idea if you have a close look around this area, around this paintwork where the pillion's leg would be. You might see some wear and some rubbing. You might even see some wear on the seat itself. And a close look at the rear foot pegs might give you some clues as to how the bike's been used. One thing is for certain though, an X-Up will have been used to go fast. This bike doesn't hang about. 1000 cc's, 112 brake horsepower and a top speed in excess of 160 miles an hour. And despite it having a fairly large seat, it's not particularly comfortable. It's more suited to thrashing about rather than sustained high-speed travel. It's also a bit thirsty, returning less than 40 miles to the gallon. But considering its lack of fancy technology, it handles really well. It's fairly sharp and surprisingly flickable for such a large bike. Its main problem is that it now looks like an old bike. But that might not be a problem for you. You might like it. You might think it looks gorgeous. It's your choice. You're buying the bike. It was the superbike, really, of the late 80s and the early 90s, and it retained that title until Mr. Honda came along in 1992 with his brand new CBR 900, the Fireblade. Which brings us to the top of our price bracket, £3,000 to £4,000. Remember we said, well, £4,000 would get you this 1993 K-registered Honda Fireblade. Now, what can I say about a Fireblade that hasn't already been said? Not very much. It is without doubt the benchmark for sports bikes, the one that all the others are measured against. And it's the one sports bike that all of the non-biking world know the name of. Honda have sold these by the shed full. So don't buy a Fireblade if you want to look different. Sitting behind the big fat tank of a blade and peering down into the rather sparse cockpit leaves you in no doubt that this machine is about one thing only: performance. The Fireblade has all the performance and ability that you'll ever need, with bucket loads to spare. The 893cc motor delivers its 120 horses in a seemingly effortless manner. The mid-range is superb, and the rush of power from 8,000 revs onwards is hard to resist. Equally as impressive is the handling, super sharp yet predictable and surprisingly comfortable. It's almost the perfect sports bike. I said almost the perfect sports bike because not everybody likes them. They don't suit everyone. The riding position isn't right for everyone, and as I've said before, they're very, very common, so not everybody wants one. But as far as doing the job goes, a Fireblade is very, very difficult to beat. And one like this could be yours for about £4,000. Now, as I said before, I could have easily pulled out 10 or more bikes between £3,000 and £4,000. There's loads and loads of them in there. And I haven't even mentioned the very popular 600 class. But whatever it is that takes your fancy, do yourself a favour and find out as much information as you can about that particular model before you buy. For example, this Kawasaki ZXR 750, 1989 F-Reg, as we said. This is an early H1 model. Now, they were good, but the rear suspension was a little bit suspect on the early ones, and the steering was a little bit heavy. Both things which Kawasaki had sorted out well and truly by the time they got to the J2 and the L1 models in 92 and 93. So it might be worth you test riding a couple of different models to see which one suits you, and of course suits your pocket the best. Then onto the X-Up 1990 G-Reg example, and again here you've got different years, different modifications. 1991 we got upside down front forks, which improved the front end handling a bit. It wasn't too bad before that, but it is slightly better on a post-91 version. A couple of things to watch out for on these: the X-Up valve is prone to sticking, the rear suspension needs to be checked, and they do have a reputation, I don't know why, but they've got a reputation for warping the front brake discs. Now you can tell if that's happened because as you squeeze the lever, you'll feel a pulsing on the actual lever itself, rather like you get with ABS as the warp disc goes through the caliper. So that's worth a check as well. But if you've got £4,000, you might want to buy yourself a Fireblade. Now, Fireblades are either great or they're a complete dog. Many of them have been used on track days, but that really isn't a problem. Don't let that put you off because it's a performance machine. It's at home on a racetrack. But you want to avoid one that's been down the road. So there are a few little bits and pieces that you could check. The ends of the mirrors, the ends of the levers, the bar ends, all the things that would touch when it's lay on its side. The foot pegs, the exhaust can, that kind of thing. Also, if it's got any big non-standard stickers on the bodywork, like this. This isn't actually a sticker, it's painted, so it's not a problem with this one. But if it had a big sticker on there, it's worth having a feel to see what might be underneath it. It could be hiding a nasty scratch, or even worse, a cracked panel. It's all pretty common sense, really. Now that's just 3 bikes out of probably hundreds that you could get for between £3,000 and £4,000. A 750, a 900 and a 1000cc machine. All top performers, all 150, 160 mile an hour plus bikes, and all looking quite different. Now the golden rule when you're buying second hand is to decide what you want, know what you want, and find out as much information on that particular machine as you can. Try to ride as many different examples of that model that you can get your hands on. And finally, I know it's very difficult, but when you're buying second hand, try to buy with your head and not your heart. Now excuse me while I go and find the 600cc section.